The twin moons hung low over the alien forest, their pale light slipping through tall glass leaf trees. Ethan Ward moved carefully through the mist, the hum of his scanner the only sound that kept him company. He was a field engineer, a lonely human working on a forgotten world where few dared to stay. Every night he repaired signal towers, sent his reports to the outpost, and returned to silence. He thought the night would be like every other. Until he heard the scream. It was sharp, distant, and filled with fear. Ethan froze, his heartbeat rising. Another cry followed, weaker, broken, carried by the cold wind. Without thinking, he grabbed his light rifle and ran toward the sound. Branches scraped against his suit. The ground shook with faint rumbling footsteps. He stopped near a clearing, hiding behind a fallen tree. Through the fog he saw moving shadows. 3 hunters in dark armor, their eyes glowing red behind their masks. They carried long energy spears, searching the ground with scanners between them. Something crawled through the dirt, small, glowing faintly blue. It was a girl, or something like one. Her skin shimmered silver under the moon, her hair bright like threads of light. She was wounded, dragging herself through the mud, trying to escape. The hunters shouted in a harsh alien tongue. One raised his weapon to strike. Ethan acted before he could think. He stepped from behind the tree, raised his rifle, and fired. A flash of white light cut through the fog, hitting the hunter's shoulder. The creature spun and fell, sparks bursting from his armor. The other 2 turned in surprise, their visors glowing brighter. Ethan shouted, "Run!" But the girl didn't move. Too weak to stand, the hunters rushed forward, firing energy bolts that tore through the ground. Ethan ducked behind the fallen log, returned fire, and hit another. The last one charged straight toward him. Ethan switched to stun mode, shot once more, and the figure collapsed into the grass. For a long moment, everything was quiet again, only the sound of rain beginning to fall. He ran to the girl and knelt beside her. Her breathing was shallow. Her silver blood glimmered like tiny stars on the dirt. "Hey, you're safe now," he said softly, even though she probably didn't understand. Her eyes opened slowly, bright and strange. Glowing violet in the dark, she whispered something, a language mixed with human words. Coming. Ethan looked around, listening. The forest was quiet, but he felt it too. That heavy silence before danger returns. He lifted her carefully into his arms, surprised by how light she was. "We have to move," he muttered. He followed the narrow trail toward his rover hidden beyond the ridge. Every few steps she struggled to speak. "They find me. Must hide." "Yeah," he said. "We'll hide." When they reached the rover, he placed her gently in the passenger seat and started the engine. The machine roared to life, hovering a few feet above the ground as they sped into the fog. The girl's eyes flicked to the window. Dark shapes moved in the distance. More hunters arriving. Energy blasts flashed behind them. Cutting through trees, Ethan swerved, pushing the rover harder. Sparks flew as branches scraped against the hull. After several minutes, they reached a cave hidden beneath a cliff. He parked the rover inside and powered down the lights. Outside, the distant sounds of engines faded slowly. Ethan turned to her, his voice gentle. "You're safe here. I promise." She stared at him with confusion and pain. Whispering, "Why help me?" He hesitated. Trying to find words because no one else would, he finally said. She looked down, her silver hair falling across her face. Her hands trembled as she touched the side of her neck. A small metal scar glowed faintly. Ethan leaned closer and saw a small tracking device embedded under her skin. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes filled with tears that shimmered like glass. Instead, she whispered, "Betrayer. They hunt me." Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't understand the details, but he understood fear, and she had plenty of it. He pulled out his toolkit, scanning the implant. The screen blinked red. Active tracker, Federation coded. His stomach dropped. "Oh no," he said quietly. If the signal was still live, then the hunters already knew her location. He needed to disable it before they surrounded the cave. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm going to turn this off." "It might hurt." She nodded weakly, trusting him. With careful hands, he connected his scanner and cut the signal. The glow dimmed, then vanished. Ethan smiled faintly. "There. All done." She sighed with relief, whispering, "Thank you, human." Her voice was soft, fragile, but full of something he hadn't heard in years, the hope. He sat back, exhausted, listening to the wind outside. The rain had stopped, replaced by a deep humming sound far away. He looked toward the cave mouth, seeing faint red lights moving through the fog again. The hunters were back, more of them this time. Ethan's heart raced. He turned to the alien girl. "We can't stay here." She opened her eyes slowly, her voice shaking. "They will kill you too." Ethan grabbed his blaster and smiled grimly. "Then we'll make sure they regret trying." Outside, the forest shimmered under the twin moons, the air filled with the low growl of engines and distant voices. Deep inside the cave, Ethan and the alien girl prepared for what was coming. Two lives from different worlds bound together by fear, courage, and something neither could yet name. And as the red lights drew closer, the first spark of their impossible story began to burn. The cave was silent except for the soft sound of rain dripping from the rocks above. Ethan sat near the fire he had built from old power cells. The dim orange glow dancing across the metal walls. The alien girl slept beside the warmth, her breathing slow and uneven. He watched her for a long time, wondering who she really was. Her silver skin shimmered faintly even in the dark. Tiny scars marking her neck and shoulders. She looked fragile. But there was something powerful about her, something that felt ancient and strange. Ethan rubbed his tired eyes, the memory of the hunters still fresh in his mind. They had moved like ghosts, silent and ruthless, whoever they were. They would not stop until they found her again. He picked up his scanner and checked the tracker chip he had removed earlier. It was dead now, no signal still. He could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Outside, the storm had faded into a cold mist that crawled across the ground like smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a metal bird shrieked through the sky. The girl stirred and opened her eyes. Her voice was soft and broken. "Where are we?" "Safe for now," Ethan said. "You can rest." She looked around the cave, confusion and fear mixing in her expression. "You should not have helped me," she whispered. "They will come for you." Ethan gave a small smile. "I've had worse company." She didn't smile back. "You don't understand." He leaned forward. "Then help me understand." For a moment she said nothing, only stared into the flickering fire. Finally she spoke. "My name is Seren." The name echoed softly through the cave. Ethan nodded. "I'm Ethan." She hesitated, then continued. "My people call me the half-blood." Her hands trembled as she spoke. "They think I am cursed," Ethan frowned. "Because you're different." She nodded slowly. "Because I am not fully one of them." She touched her chest, her skin glowing faintly where her heart beat. "My mother was from your world," she said. "A scientist from the Federation." Ethan's breath caught. "A human." "Yes," she whispered. "They called her a thief of life. She tried to build peace. But my father's tribe saw it as betrayal." Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. If her story was true, then humanity had broken another promise. "How did you end up here?" he asked. Seren looked away. "They found out what I was. They said my blood would bring ruin. They hunted me across the stars." She closed her eyes. "I ran until I could no longer run." The fire crackled softly. Ethan stared into it, thinking of the war he had fought years ago. He had seen whole worlds burn for reasons no one remembered. Maybe this girl was another scar from that same madness. He said quietly, "You're safe here, Seren. I won't let them hurt you." She looked at him with wide eyes, as if seeing something she had never known before. "Why would a human protect me?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Because you needed help." Her gaze softened. "Then maybe not all humans are monsters." Outside, thunder rolled again, but it wasn't thunder. Ethan moved to the entrance and peered out, far across the valley. Lights glowed in the fog, search drones sweeping through the forest. "They're getting closer," he said. Seren stood beside him, her face pale. "They never give up," he turned to her. "There must be somewhere safe, a base, a signal beacon." She shook her head. "No place is safe for me." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we make one." He grabbed his gear and started packing supplies. Seren watched, confused. "You would fight them." Ethan smiled faintly. "I've fought worse for less." As they prepared to leave, the cave shook with a distant explosion. Dust rained from the ceiling. The echoes of metal crashing filled the air. Seren flinched, her hands covering her ears. Ethan steadied her. "We have to move." She nodded. But before they could leave, a faint sound came from deeper inside the cave. Ethan froze, raising his rifle. A soft hum vibrated through the rock. Something alive. Mechanical, buried under layers of dust. He followed the sound and brushed away the dirt, revealing an old Federation console, Its light flickered weakly. Seren's eyes widened. That's from Project Unity. Ethan looked at her sharply. Project what? She swallowed. It was the name before Genesis. The human project that created me. The console buzzed, showing a symbol, 2 intertwined circles glowing red. Ethan felt a chill. I've seen that before. During the war. Seren stepped closer, touching the symbol with trembling fingers. The screen came alive with human text. Subject 07, hybrid prototype. Status, active. Her voice broke. That's me. Ethan stared at the data. Lines of code, DNA strands, and mission logs flashing across the display. It showed coordinates, reports, even orders from high command, he whispered. They tracked you from the start. Seren's face hardened. Then they lied to both of us. Suddenly the console beeped loudly. Ethan cursed, slamming the power switch too late. The signal had already sent. Seren's expression turned to panic. They know where we are. Ethan grabbed his pack. Then we'd better be gone before they arrive. They rushed out into the misty night, the air thick with electricity. The forest glowed faintly from hidden fires burning miles away. Seren looked back once, tears in her bright eyes. They'll destroy this world to find me. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand. Then we'll make sure they regret it. As they vanished into the darkness, a distant roar filled the sky. A fleet of ships descending through the clouds, their engines shaking the ground. The hunt was far from over. And somewhere among those stars, humanity's darkest secret was waking again. The night sky burned red as thunder rolled through the clouds. Ethan and Seren ran through the mist, their shadows stretching long across the broken land. Behind them, engines roared, and the air flashed with beams of light from the hunter ships. They were close, too close. The ground shook beneath their feet, the forest giving way to open plains filled with wreckage. Old war machines lay half buried in dust and metal, their rusted bodies glinting faintly under the moons. This place had once been a battlefield. Now it was a graveyard of both humans and aliens. Ethan's lungs burned, but he didn't slow down. He looked at Seren, who was barely keeping pace, her breath shallow, her skin dimming. Hold on, he said, his voice rough. We're almost there. She looked up weakly. Where? To the ruins, he replied. They can't track heat there, she nodded. Trusting him completely, behind them the hunters' ships descended lower, sending waves of dust and wind across the plain, the air filled with the high-pitched whine of scanners. Ethan gritted his teeth, pulling her behind an old metal barrier as a beam swept past them. They crouched in silence as the red light moved slowly across the ruins. Seren trembled, whispering, They know I'm here. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let's make sure they don't find you. He glanced around and spotted a half-buried transport tank. Its side hatch was open and the inside still glowed faintly from a working power cell. He guided Seren inside, closing the door softly behind them. The air was thick with dust, but it was shelter. Inside the tank, old control panels flickered with dying light. Ethan checked the system and managed to power up the main screen. Still works, he muttered, surprised. Seren touched the console with her glowing fingers, and the interface changed instantly. Her energy connected with the old system like it recognized her. I can jam their sensors, she said quietly. But it will take time. Do it, Ethan said. I'll watch the door. She nodded and began working, her eyes glowing brighter, streams of light running through the cables. Ethan listened to the sounds outside, the hum of engines, the echo of footsteps on metal. They were searching, methodical, relentless as minutes passed. He thought about what she had told him. A child born between two worlds, hunted by both, it didn't seem fair. And yet she faced it with a kind of courage he hadn't seen since the war. Maybe that was why he couldn't leave her. Maybe saving her was the one good thing left he could still do. A sudden explosion outside shook the ground. Ethan flinched, peering through a crack in the metal. Hunter troops were setting charges, blowing apart every wreck they found. They're destroying everything, he said. Seren's voice was steady. They always destroy what they fear. Ethan turned toward her. You almost done. Almost, she whispered, her body trembling from the energy drain. The lights around her flickered violently. Seren, stop, he said. You'll burn yourself out. She shook her head. If I stop, they'll find us. Before he could argue, the screen flashed green. Signal jammed, she said. Collapsing against the console, Ethan caught her before she fell. Her skin cold and glowing faintly. He smiled weakly. You did it. But the moment was short-lived. The wall behind them exploded inward. Metal shattering like glass, 3 hunters stormed in. Their weapons raised, Ethan fired first. The blaster's light cutting through the smoke. One hunter fell, but the others advanced fast. He ducked behind the console, pulling Seren down with him. Energy bolts tore through the room, sparks raining from the ceiling. Ethan's rifle hummed as it overheated, warning lights flashing red. He glanced at Seren, her eyes half open, weak but aware. Can you still use your energy, he asked. She shook her head faintly. Not much. But enough. She pressed her hand to the floor and a low hum filled the room. The ground beneath the hunters glowed bright blue. An energy pulse erupted. Knocking them backward, the tank walls shook, and the ceiling cracked open, revealing the dark sky above. Ethan grabbed her and pulled her toward the exit. They climbed out just as the tank collapsed behind them. Flames and smoke filled the air above them. The hunter ships circled like vultures, their lights searching the ruins. Ethan spotted a distant glow, a power tower still standing tall. He pointed toward it. There, if we reach that tower. I can call for help. Seren nodded, though she could barely stand. They ran again through the ruins, chased by beams of red light. Explosions followed their steps, throwing debris into the air. Ethan shielded Seren as best as he could, his body aching with every step. Finally, they reached the tower, half broken but still humming with power. He accessed the terminal and began linking his communicator. As he worked, Seren looked toward the sky, her eyes widened in horror. Ethan! They're not hunters. He looked up and froze. Descending through the clouds were massive ships, far larger and older. The symbols on their hulls were not from the hunters, but from her tribe. The ships spread across the horizon. Casting shadows over the ruins, Seren whispered, They found me. My people. Ethan felt a chill run through him. You mean the same people who tried to kill you? She nodded slowly, tears glimmering in her eyes. Yes, and now they'll kill you too. The air trembled as the alien warships began to descend. The hunters fled into the forest. Terrified of what was coming, Ethan looked at her, his voice calm despite the fear rising inside him. Then we make our stand here, he said. Seren stared at him, amazed by his resolve. Why do you fight for me? He smiled faintly, because maybe this time, a human can do something right. The sky above them filled with blinding light. Dozens of alien warriors dropped from the ships, their armor shining like silver fire. Ethan gripped his weapon tighter, standing beside Seren. Whatever happened next, he knew there was no turning back. The real battle, the one between truth and blood, was about to begin. The sky cracked open with thunder as silver warships descended through the clouds. Ethan shielded his eyes from the blinding light, the air trembling with the roar of alien engines. The ground beneath his feet shook, and dust swirled around like a storm made of ash and fire. Beside him, Seren stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief and sorrow. It's them, she whispered, her voice trembling. My people. Ethan looked up. Watching the ships take formation above the ruins, they moved with terrifying precision, their armor reflecting the fire of the burning sky. From the largest ship, a bright beam shot down, creating a shimmering doorway of light. Figures began stepping out, tall warriors clad in shining armor, their movements sharp and silent. At their front stood a single figure, his armor engraved with symbols that pulsed like veins of light. His face was hidden beneath a silver mask, but his presence carried authority and pain. Seren's breath caught as she whispered, Rael? Ethan looked at her. Who is he? Her voice cracked. My brother. Rael stepped forward, his voice deep and calm echoing across the ruins. Serene of the broken blood, he said. You were ordered destroyed. Yet here you stand. Seren took a shaky step forward. Rael, please, you don't understand. His tone was cold. I understand enough. You are a danger to all life. Ethan raised his weapon, moving between them. Back off, he said. She's done nothing wrong. Rael turned his masked gaze toward him. A human, he said with disgust. Of course, Seren grabbed Ethan's arm. Don't, she whispered. He won't listen, but Ethan didn't move. You call yourself her brother, but you're pointing weapons at her. Rael's warriors spread out, surrounding them with glowing spears. She is an abomination, Rael said, his voice like steel, born of forbidden blood. She carries the corruption of your kind. Seren's eyes filled with tears. I never asked for this. I never wanted to be born different. Rael's hand trembled as he lifted his weapon. That is why mercy must end where sin begins. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the wind. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. You think purity makes you strong, but it's what kills you. Rael's mask turned toward him. You dare speak of strength, human? I dare speak of truth, Ethan said. She saved my life, and she's not your curse. She's your proof. Proof that two worlds can survive together. For a moment, Rael said nothing, but his warriors tightened their grip on their weapons. Seren reached out, her voice desperate. Rael, please listen, our people are dying. Your hate won't save them. Rael's voice cracked for the first time. You think I do not know that? He removed his mask slowly, revealing a scarred face, eyes filled with pain and conflict. I lost everything because of your creation, he said. Mother, father, our home, all gone when humans came. Seren shook her head. They didn't destroy us, Rael. We destroyed ourselves with fear. Her glow brightened as she took another step. Look at me, brother. I am not the end of our kind. I am the beginning. Rael's expression softened for a second, just a second, then hardened again. You speak with their tongue, he said, and you think with their heart. He lifted his spear, energy crackling along its edge. Then you die with them, he said. And fired, Ethan moved without thinking, throwing himself in front of Seren. The blast hit his shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. His weapon clattering away, Seren screamed, her hands glowing bright white as she knelt beside him. Rael froze, watching the light spread through the ruins. It wasn't fire or destruction, it was warmth, pure and living. Every stone it touched began to hum with energy. Every broken machine flickered back to life. Seren's tears fell on Ethan's face as she whispered, You shouldn't have done that. Ethan smiled weakly. Guess I'm bad at following orders, Rael watched. Torn between rage and confusion. What is this power, he demanded. What have you become? Seren looked up, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. What you fear most? Brother? Hope. The ground began to shake as her energy pulsed outward. The warriors staggered, unable to lift their weapons. Images flashed through their minds. Memories of the past, of humans and aliens once standing together. The truth of their shared creation burned inside them like fire. Rael fell to his knees, clutching his head, his voice breaking. Make it stop. Seren's glow faded as she collapsed beside Ethan. Exhausted, Rael looked at her with tears in his eyes. Whispering, Sister? He crawled to her side. Trembling, I didn't know, he said. I thought you were the reason for our curse. She smiled faintly, her hand reaching up to his face. No curse, only fear. He gripped her hand, his voice filled with shame. Forgive me. She closed her eyes, whispering softly. Then forgive yourself. Ethan tried to stand but stumbled. Rael caught him, helping him to his feet. You protected her, Rael said, when even her own kind would not. Ethan nodded. Someone had to. Rael looked up at the glowing horizon, his voice heavy. Then maybe it's time I do the same. He turned to his warriors and shouted, Stand down! The alien soldiers hesitated, then lowered their weapons. The light of their ships faded as the engines cooled. For the first time, silence fell, not of death, but of peace. And in that silence, the echo of two siblings, one human, one alien, it became the first sound of a new beginning. The first light of dawn crept across the horizon. The warships hung silent in the sky, their engines fading into a low hum. For the first time in years, the air did not smell of smoke or fear. It smelled like rain, and something else, something alive. Ethan stood near the edge of the ruins, his arm bandaged where Rael's blast had burned through his suit. He watched the rising sun bleed across the metal landscape. Beside him, Seren sat quietly, her silver hair glowing faintly in the morning light. She looked weak but peaceful, her energy dim yet steady. Rael stood a few feet away, his armor cracked, his face bare and tired. His warriors stood behind him in silence, unsure what to believe anymore. They had come to destroy her, yet here they were, still alive, saved by the very one they called cursed. Ethan broke the silence first, his voice rough. You could have killed us all, but you didn't. Rael looked at him with tired eyes. I saw the truth she showed us, he said, and it burned deeper than any weapon could. He turned toward Seren, his tone softer. You carry both human and alien blood, but what runs through you is life itself. Seren smiled faintly. Then maybe I was never meant to destroy. Only to remind. The wind moved gently through the ruins. Broken machines hummed quietly, revived by the energy she had released. It was as if the planet itself had taken a breath after centuries of silence. Rael knelt before her, lowering his weapon to the ground. My people will not understand, he said, but I will tell them what I saw. Ethan stepped closer. And what did you see? Rael looked up, his voice calm. That the universe does not need purity to survive. It needs mercy. The words echoed softly through the ruins. Even the soldiers seemed moved, some lowering their heads in quiet respect. Serene looked between the two men, her brother and her savior, and tears shimmered in her eyes. You both remind me of what we lost, she said softly, and what we could still become. Her hand began to glow faintly. The light spreading across her skin. Ethan frowned. You're still weak. You should rest, but she shook her head. There's something I have to finish. She stepped toward the center of the ruins. The ground beneath her began to hum as glowing patterns emerged. The remains of an ancient reactor buried beneath the surface. Rael's eyes widened. Seren, what are you doing? She smiled gently. Ending the pain. Ethan realized what she meant too late. He grabbed her arm. No, you can't. You'll die. She looked at him, her voice calm and warm. Maybe, but my people and yours deserve peace, not ghosts. Her energy pulsed brighter, waves of light spreading out in circles. The reactor core beneath the ruins awakened. Absorbing her glow, Rael shouted, Stop! You'll destroy yourself. But Seren only smiled. I am not destroying anything. I am setting it free. The ground shook violently as pillars of light shot into the sky. The warships trembled, their engines shutting down one by one. Every weapon, every machine built for war went silent. The soldiers fell to their knees, watching as the light spread across the planet. It moved like water, cleansing, healing the soil and air that war had poisoned for decades. Flowers began to bloom through the cracks in the ground. Rael stared in awe, whispering, She's remaking the world. Ethan tried to pull her back, but the light surrounded her completely. She turned to him one last time, her voice soft as a whisper. You taught me that being human isn't about blood. It's about heart. He reached for her hand, tears in his eyes. Then don't leave me. She smiled sadly. I'll never be gone. I'll be in every light you see. With those words, her body dissolved into the glow. The energy burst outward, blinding and pure, then slowly faded into the calm warmth of dawn. When Ethan opened his eyes, the ruins were silent. Rael stood beside him, his armor glowing faintly from the energy that now lived within it. Seren was gone, but her presence lingered everywhere. In the air, in the soil, in the sun, the planet was alive again. Rael looked at Ethan and said quietly, She became the bridge our worlds needed. Ethan nodded, his voice breaking. Yeah, and she paid the price for it. Rael placed a hand on his shoulder. Then her sacrifice will not be forgotten. He turned toward his warriors, his voice strong. Let this day mark the end of division and no more purity. No more hate. The soldiers bowed their heads. And for the first time in generations, humans and aliens stood side by side in peace. Ethan looked at the rising sun, the light warm on his face. He whispered to himself, You did it, Seren. You changed everything. The wind carried his words into the sky, and far above, a faint shimmer of silver light danced in the morning air. Like a heartbeat across the stars, the war had ended not with destruction, but with understanding, and in the silence that followed, a new age began, and born not from power but from compassion, because sometimes one act of love can save an entire universe, and one heart, even if it beats only once, can echo forever.